My name is Jim Kern. I'm the Executive Director of the museum. I'd like to welcome you all this afternoon for what should be a very interesting panel discussion. I'm very much looking forward to it. This is in celebration of National Women's History Month, which is really just beginning, and so we hope to have some more things throughout the month and really throughout the year to recognize the contributions of women. If you look around the room here, for example, as many of you know, this building was originally the Vallejo City Hall, and this is the old City Council chambers. But the exhibits in this room are always devoted to the contributions of women in Vallejo's history. So we like to think that women's history is not something that's just one month of the year, but really all year round. It's an important part of our history. I know it's a very busy day, lots of things going on, and the weather is not necessarily cooperative, so I'm glad to see that you are all able to come out today. I'd like to recognize in attendance today our City Attorney, Claudia Quintana. Thank you very much for coming. Now, following the program today, this is the final day for our current exhibit downstairs in the Hall of History, which is called In the Fields of the North and Los Campos del Norte. And it deals with issues relating to migrant farm workers in the United States and all up and down the West Coast. Beautiful photos taken by photojournalist David Bacon. So I hope you'll join us downstairs for a little bit of refreshments afterwards to see that exhibit on its closing day. We were hoping we might be able to extend that exhibit, but unfortunately the scheduling just didn't work out for that. But I'm glad you're all here today, and if you haven't seen it, I hope you'll stick around and take a look at that. We're again glad that you've all come out to support the museum, but I would like to mention that as a nonprofit organization, we do lots of things like most nonprofits do to raise funds throughout the year, and the best way that you can support the museum if you enjoy programs like this is by becoming a member, and there are membership brochures out on the table. But we also have fundraising events throughout the year, and the next big one that we have coming up is the 2019 Vallejo Garden Tour. This is the 16th year the museum has sponsored the garden tour. It's on Sunday, May 19th, and it not only supports the museum, but it really shows off some of the beautiful gardens that we have throughout Vallejo. We have selected 9 gardens. They're located all throughout the community, and it's really a great event to show off some of the really wonderful, beautiful neighborhoods and gardens that we have here in Vallejo. So without further ado, I would like to welcome and also to thank our museum board member, David Gonzalez, who is also the chairman of our program committee and who is responsible for putting this together today. So, David.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today and accepting the invitation that the museum put out to all of you and that you received from our panel or our honorees in the audience as well. One thing I'd like to mention is that if you enjoy programs like this today, they have been few and far between in terms of the representing the Hispanic community, in particular in Solano County. So if you like more of these, and if you are interested in being more than a footnote in history, that is to say other people interpreting who we are as a community, then I encourage you to talk to me after today, because I'm going to be termed out pretty soon on this board. And so we need more voices. And if you're interested in talking about becoming a member of the board of directors, I'll be happy to share with you my experiences and what you can look forward to in working with this wonderful organization. Now, having said that, one of the people that I was delighted in which to be made in contact with and who accepted my invitation to be part of this as a moderator, she has extensive experience in doing things like you will hear today and you will witness today. This is an active woman. I'm encouraged by the lack of age, but not lack of experience that she has in doing as much as she does, and it's remarkable. She is the CEO of RGD Enterprises. She's a board member at the United Nations Association in USA East Bay, former 2016-2017 United Nations Empower Women Champion for Change at Empower Women, a public speaker, a motivator, She's also shares my love of music and performing music. She has her own music company, which she not only sings, but she writes her own music. A woman of many talents. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Roxana Damas.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for coming out today to celebrate the wonderful Latina women that we have in Solano County. Can we get that round of applause? Before I get started to acknowledge everyone, I do want to take a moment of silence to acknowledge the situation around the world of one of the highest human rights violations, which is the abuse of women and girls. Thank you for taking that moment, because we know that violence against women also impacts our own cities, our counties. And we often see it in the news, but we don't often talk about it enough and what it means. But knowing and remembering this is important because it's also reminded us on this day, as it should every day, that women around the world are still trying to find equity. There has been a lot of progress, but we're definitely not there yet. And this particular day was designed because women were being abused in the workplace. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. And that's why this day came about, because they wanted to protest and make sure that they were being treated right as they're part of the labor of that country and abroad. But when I say we start with something, obviously not the greatest conversation to have, but one that's needed and that we have been making progress. And in fact, I am happy to say today that we have 2 Latinas serving at the level of the United Nations as heads of many departments. So we start with Michelle Bachelet, who was former president of Chile, but also a woman who is now the head of the Human Rights Commission for the United Nations. We also have Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who is the 4th female to ever take to be the president of the world's parliament. So she is the president of the General Assembly at the United Nations, and she is from Ecuador. And of course, we've heard it all year long last year. It's the year of the Latina. So I do want to remind all of you that yes, we are making major progress. It's not all somber, of course. And in Solano County, I am happy to say that I know most of the ladies here at the panel, or at least I've heard of everyone's work out here, and some of you out here as well, that we know we're making progress here, and there's a lot that's been spearheaded by the Latinas in this community for a very long time. So now I'd like to go and start acknowledging some of the people in the audience. Some people I heard were out sick, but I'm still going to name them because these women are powerhouses, and we need to continue to be visible with our Latina leaders in our community. I will start with Nina Loera Diaz, who I believe is the first one who's out sick, so we send her an applause wherever she is, hoping she gets better. We have Lisette Estrella Henderson from Solano County Superintendent of Schools. I don't know if she's here yet, but I will. Veronica Favela, she's also the owner from Favela Mexican's Restaurant, great food, and also an educator. Is she here? Alma Hernandez, event consultant and student mentor for Puente program. I know I saw you. Hi. And someone I do not get to see that often, Margarita Lopez. She is a cancer warrior, author, and speaker, and overall powerhouse. Claudia Quintana, also a fellow Salvadorian who has not had a chance to meet, city attorney for the city of Vallejo. So hello. Isabel Reyes. Also representing countries of Mexico, founder of Eric Reyes Foundation and La Clínica de la Raza. She also works at La Clínica de la Raza. Itlali Flores Cepeda, she's the current president of Solano County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I don't see her, I believe she was in Mexico, but all the way over there, wherever she is, and Maria Zuniga from State Farm Insurance. Where is she? She's not on Facebook over there. All right, well, without further ado, I'm gonna get started with this powerhouse panel, and I was told that I have to direct the questions directly to you because if I just say, you're all gonna jump at the same time. Is that true? Never, of course not. All right, so I'm gonna actually just names, but I want you all to say your titles and what you do, because you're going to do a better job than me in doing that, I am sure. And so the first questions after you say your name is say your title, what you do, and when did you start living in Solano County, okay? So I will start with left to right to Marisela Barbosa-Cortez. Can you hear me? See? Okay, so Marisela Barbosa-Cortez. I am co-founder, more like in 2 years, founder of Green High Spaces. I am a mother, a business owner, and a community advocate. As of 8 months ago, I was actually in Solano County for 39 years. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Marisela. All right, Andrea Canola Garcia.
Can you hear me, or do I need to?
I skipped one, sorry, but you were on my list here, so go ahead.
Andrea Garcia. I am Associate Vice President of Touro University, California, which is located here on World Cross on Mare Island. I moved to Solano County in 1991. Prior to that, my husband and I were in the Bay Area for a couple of years. But before that, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised there. And I do have my wonderful twins here tonight. One of the things I love doing is embarrassing them to death. Right there. Yeah.
Let me go back to a lady that was last on my list here, but it's Karla Paz-Prieto.
Yes. Karla Paz-Prieto. I am a realtor in Solano County, and I am also the California Commissioner of Disability Access. And I've been living in Fairfield since 1990. I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco. I say that I came into this country when I was 2.5 and fought to become a citizen. So I would have been a DACA if that was in place back in the early 70s, but here I am, being a U.S. citizen when I came into this country, not being a citizen, but so I'm proud of that.
At the end here, Doriss Panduro.
I might use the mic, my voice is a little shot right now. So Doriss Panduro, and I am the current, more new Solano County representative for State Assemblymember Jim Frazier. And I was born and raised in Fairfield, so I am a lifetime Solano County resident.
Thank you very much. And I'll pull the mic out too if it's necessary. Does everybody hear them well back there, or should they use the mics? Yes, no? On the mics, ladies. Grab the mics. Think like you're going to sing or something like that. Go for it. All right. So thank you all for sharing your name and the history of how you got here into Solano County. And actually, that's where we want to go. We want to go step back into the history of Solano and Latinas in Solano. So we want to understand, based on the years you've been here in Solano County, what is the biggest difference you've seen for Latina leaders in Solano County since you arrived to what's happening right now? And I'm going to just start from the left corner. Yeah.
Okay, so I arrived in 1979. So the biggest difference actually was that in school, I will start with a story about school. Back then, there was no ESL class. I actually participated in a classroom where they had bilingual education, and it was only 8 students. 3 of us were Latinos, and 5 of us were, the other 5 not because they were Filipino. And everything else was done in English in the classroom. So I come from a family that was very involved in the community. It was called Concilio Latino, which that's the leadership that we had then. And they're no longer there. Actually, my aunt and my uncle were part of it, and they're in their 80s now. And so my community involvement when it comes to leadership, it was through them. They used to have pachangas, fiestas, parties, and there was fundraising events. And they raised money for scholarships. And back then, I was a scholarship recipient, $500, also through this organization. And really, it was a gathering of community through that organization and many other community members. We had St. Vincent's, and the Spanish Mass was actually at San Luis Beltran. Those of you from Vallejo, that it's located on Sonoma Boulevard. We had a lot of Latinos that actually helped build that church. We were not, the Mass was packed, and we were not allowed to go to St. Vincent. It wasn't until we had a priest that came in and advocated for us to have a Spanish Mass and St. Vincent. So I actually have a lot of stories to share, and I just wanted to, because I know we have more participants.
We need a book with Marisela.
So
yes.
we'll just share about that. And slowly we've seen that Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in 1989, the Napa Hispanic, Napa Solano Chamber of Commerce were also an advocate for the community back when chocolate trucks, they didn't want to have the chocolate trucks in the community. So yeah, I'll stop there. You guys can tell more stories.
I know with the next series on Facebook is going to be how did we end up having what we have so far, and this is going to be featuring Marisela. All right.
Well, since I've been here since 1990, all I can say is look at the panel, look at all of us here in this room. You would never have seen, 4 or 5, a lot of Latinas in leadership positions back in the early 90s. It's really changed. I think the perception of female Latinas has also changed. I think they understand that we are educated and we're kind of strong. We don't take anything. So we do push, and we are automatic leaders, I think, just in our home, in our community. And that's what I have noticed in the community as a whole, is that you do see a lot more empowered Latinos and Latinas. And I love that that's the biggest change that I've seen in Solano County since I've been here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ahead of there.
When my husband and I came here in 1991, we moved into Fairfield. We're still there, actually, and there were very few Hispanics who, I think if you saw a Hispanic, they were not in a prominent position. They were farm workers or working at Home Depot or working at the supermarket, but you didn't see leaders. At least this was the perception that I saw. And we didn't see a lot when we went out into the community, and granted, my husband and I moved here, just the two of us. So we didn't have a family. We didn't have a core. We didn't have groups of people that we stayed with, and because when the Latinos get together, they get together and party, right? And have a great time. But we didn't have that. And so for many years, it was just the two of us. And it wasn't until a few years later we met some folks, a family who adopted us, and then that's when we realized, there are some other Hispanics, but the groups were always very small and they kept to themselves. If you look at the landscape of Fairfield of Solano County, you see Hispanics in leadership roles, whereas you didn't see before. Case in point, at Touro University, you never had a Hispanic in a higher level position until actually I came in. and now you see more, and you see assistant deans, or you see leaders there. So the dynamics have definitely changed in Solano, and I think, and here's another perfect example, the city attorney. And you're seeing the force coming through, and I have to say, Latino women are really making a difference, and I think that it was very difficult, not only for Hispanics, Latinos, but for a woman to be Hispanic, Latina. But you're seeing a lot of Hispanics overall in leadership positions, and not just Latinas, but overall. And the landscape is completely different today than it was in 1991.
Thank you.
So I guess for me it's different because I still see there's a big gap still. I think growing up, the Latino leaders that I knew were my family. My mom, my aunts, I heard their stories, and they struggled. I was born here, fortunately enough to grow up here. And so growing up in Solano County, I think I was isolated to that community. I'd go to Spanish Mass on Sundays at 1:30. My abuelita was in Las Guadalupanas. Those were leaders in my eyes. And so growing up as a professional woman now, I look around Solano County and I still see that there is a definite, as long as there's been improvements, absolutely. But there is definitely still areas where I think women in general and Latinas, women of color, are definitely still needed. And I'm proud to be able to be up here and to have women in my family who have stepped up in leadership roles and be amongst these women who they've laid foundation for women like myself to be where I am today. But I think that I look forward to being able to continue that foundation for other Latina women that are coming up the path. So I think Solano County is diverse and we have grown, but I think there is definitely still room, a lot of room for more women of color in leadership positions.
Well, I couldn't agree more with all of you, and definitely with that last statement. I actually want to make a moment to remember this person, because I don't know that many of you know her, maybe you did, but her name, and forgive me, I don't remember her last name, but her first name was Rocky. and she passed away. But one thing I remember about her is that I was new to Solano County, and when I moved here, I was really young. I was only 16, but I was already in college. I was already working, so I got exposed to a lot of different circles. And in that space, I remember meeting her, and I was told that she was a troublemaker, and that therefore, anything that was aligned to her was going to have a problem in the county. And I remember distinctly how even our own community sometimes would stay away, even though they needed her for some support. Long story short is, I know she ended up being very isolated from the county. And I know for many years, I don't even talk about it publicly, but it was one of the reasons that motivated me to go outside of Solano County and do my work and make sure that I had networks outside of here to ensure that we had enough support for the Latinas who did want to be the troublemakers and calladitas no más, right? So with that said, how have you taken some of these obstacles because of what is perceived as cultural heritage that's not maybe understood in the community that you live, but how have you turned them into opportunities? Can I have you start when you said that?
So before I answer the question, remember I said I was a mother, so I am going to answer the question, and I'm going to have to excuse myself because my daughter has competition in Stockton, cheerleading competition, and so I have to be with her. So to the answer, I think that the obstacles that I face, I actually saw them as opportunities, like what you said. Okay, it's a challenge, and I've gone through life, and I learned this through my grandma and parents, is how do I make things happen? I cannot make, it's not, you can't make it happen, or no, how can I make this work for me? How can I make this happen? How can I assure that the person has stereotyped me into, or label me to be an immigrant, doesn't even speak well the language, or look where she's coming from. How can I move from that barrier to prove to them that I'm very capable of doing the same work, the same leadership roles that anybody has in this county. And this county has actually been, I don't know, from my experience and from back to 1979, you guys, when I was in school, and people were like in the 80s, you're so smart, you're this, to now we're like, oh, you're a beaner or whatever. It has gone through some changes there, and I really don't know what happened there. I think I have an idea, but again, it's again looking at myself as to prove the world that I don't want my daughters. I have 2 daughters. I don't want them to experience what I experienced, and I want them to go out and conquer the world, feeling that they're at the same level as anybody, no matter their age, their color of skin, or their citizenship.
Thank you very much, Marisela, and safe drive back, and good luck to your cheerleading daughters. All right.
Pretty much the same lines as what Marisela said. Growing up, a lot of times I was really light and had very curly hair, and so a lot of times, they were like, well, what are you? Are you mixed? They didn't know what my nationality was, but when I would speak, I had an accent because I could only speak Spanish until I was 6. So fun fact is, I flunked kindergarten because I couldn't speak English, and my kindergarten teacher, the first one I had, told me that I lived in America and I had to sit in the corner with a dunce hat. So the first whole year of kindergarten, I didn't speak English because I didn't learn anything. So that's bringing me on to what we're talking about right now. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm gonna hate Caucasian people because she was, mean to me. I urinated in my underwear and my pants, in class. I took that, I think that made me stronger, because that actually, I flunked kindergarten and I had to do kindergarten again. And I just decided the next time when somebody told me that I couldn't do something, I did it. So I was a tomboy, I went out and I played with the boys, and I learned how to box. And then as growing up, all those things, I think, just kind of made me into somebody that when somebody told me, no, you can't do it, I would say, yes, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna supersede what they've told me. If I have a goal, I'm gonna go over that goal. So I'm gonna show them who I am, and they're not gonna look at me just because I'm a Latina or a female, For example, even in our countries, my uncle had a helicopter in El Salvador, and I went to go visit him, and I'm like, oh, Theo, I want to go fly in the helicopter with you. And he's like, oh, no, you're a female, you can't go up. And then my brother was right there, and then he asked my brother, hey, do you want to go up on the helicopter? And I could teach you how to, drive a helicopter. I'm like, I looked at him, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, hello, I want to do it. So even in our own community, growing up, it's kind of, you kind of get that thrown at you. So I'm going to learn how to fly a plane. That's one of my things that I'm going to do this year. And I think it kind of goes back to my uncle telling me that I couldn't go on the darn helicopter, so I'm going to go and learn how to fly a plane. But so those are the things I think that we just, what brings us down actually makes us stronger sometimes. So we have to go through these, some of these downs just to make you stronger. And I think with all of us here, we probably had situations, and all of you as well, that have been in that type of situation. And it just makes me more of I guess, hey, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to supersede whatever you placed upon me, and I'm just going to go over it. So that's the way I look at it.
Thank you very much.
My story is a little different than that one, although we actually share something I didn't know about you. I received so many, no, you can't do it, no, you can't, and that's what really propelled me forward. I was born in New York, 1965, and I tell you the year because it was a time when you could not tell people you were Hispanic or you spoke another language. And so I only spoke Spanish at home, and I only spoke it with my mother. And that's why today, if a Hispanic hears me, they hear me speak with an accent, it's because I only spoke that with my mother. My father taught me English because he wanted to make sure when I went out into the world, I didn't have an accent. Because I was frowned upon, they would discriminate. We grew up in a neighborhood with Irish and Jewish people and Hispanics. If you were Hispanic, you were hidden. You did not come out and say anything. And so growing up, I really didn't have that network of Hispanic friends. The culture was at home, which the culture is in my heart. I'm Argentine, that's in my heart, but it was only at home. And so later on in life, let me take one step back. My maiden name is Canola, and so I never had to identify myself as Hispanic. So everything was in my favor of being Caucasian, if that makes sense. When I married and I changed my name to Garcia, my life changed. And I was pigeonholed. And I was automatically, especially when I came here to California, I'm Mexican. You're Mexican. And not that this is an insult to anyone who's Mexican, but I was put into that. You're Mexican. You don't have an education. You can't do this. By all means, you can't go to college. And that's what I did get. I get the way, I remember starting at Solano, I was so excited. And someone said to me, well, you're not really going to take that class. You're not going to pass that class. And it was those people who kept telling me I can't do something like you that made me change and say, no, I'm going to do that. And I don't think that had to do necessarily with my culture. I think it had to do with my philosophy of being female and of people telling me that I can't do it. A man can do it, sure. A woman, nah. And I think that's what really pushed me forward. So the opportunities to answer the question that I changed around, it was all the negativity. To me, I just made that into a positive. I was not going to let anyone push me down. And God knows that happened more than once in the workforce and personal lives with friends. But it was all those no's that made me say yes and push me to where I am today. And I'm not done yet.
So yeah, definitely turning struggles into positives for me. I guess starting back in even probably high school. Growing up, I have a lot of cousins on my mom's side and my dad's side, and not all of them chose the best paths. I did have cousins that were involved with gangs. My parents were, I think, tried to isolate me from that and protect me. And so I was sent to private schools my entire life, pretty much. But that did not stop the racism that I experienced. But for me, seeing their paths and knowing what people would say, they would tell me, oh, you're gonna end up a statistic, a young mom, Latina mom, teen mom. And I think that stuck in my head so much that I'm still not married or have kids. No, that's not right. But it might be a little bit. It just impacted me so much. I didn't want to be that teen mom. I wanted to get my education. So I have my bachelor's, I have my master's, I ran for office, and I'm very career driven. I'm very passionate about what I do in my community, and I love where I live. And so for me, it was always just like trying to stay focused on my goals and try to, not be a statistic. And as much as negativity that it was, it in a way it kept me on the right path. And the racism that I experienced at private school prepared me for college because I experienced it then again there. And when I experienced it there, I was like, oh, I've done this before. I can do it again. And when I ran for office, I experienced it again. Very different ways, but still, I was getting pigeonholed. And you know what? It's part of the journey. And I had to learn, if I hadn't gone through it, I think at that younger age, I think it would have impacted me a lot different as an adult. And so as much as I did not like those experiences, they really prepared me for what I had to go through recently, and in college, because a lot of my friends hadn't gone through those experiences when they were younger, and so it really impacted them at that level when they were, in their, 1920s. So as much as the education was great in private schools, but at the same time, I went through things that I never thought I would. And they helped me prepare me for what I've gone through now. And so I'm appreciative of those.
Thank you. These are conversations we have a lot internally, but not always in these forums, and definitely not in Solano County. So I definitely want to thank everyone for setting this up, because I know there's been a few in different, as the years have gone by, we have gotten better having these forums, but I still think it definitely needs to be more. One reason is since 2006 and till this year, there was a study called the National State of Latinas. And that came out the first time in 2006, and then Univision has done a study since then. And young Latinas have the highest rates of suicide or attempt to commit suicide in the country. And one of the reasons that doesn't change, along with some of the situations that are going on socially and politically in the country, is that Latinas feel isolated from their spaces. So at home, you have a certain traditional model to be, or the expectation. In your communities, there's another space. And then, of course, when you go into the work field, or if you go into academia, we know that women of color in graduate programs tend to have higher rates also of substance abuse and so many different things. And again, also suicidal, depressing thoughts. So with that said, things really have not changed enough to have a support system. So these conversations are so important, because we need to be able to have the conversation about how you told me no, and this is how I went ahead and I still did it. I shared the other day on Facebook about my mom. She drove 12 times from San Francisco to El Salvador. We did these trips. She drove stick shift all the way over there, and she gets to El Salvador and she's told, you cannot get a job as a driver because this is a male's job. So of course, years later, she's a bus driver, she does all this other stuff. So it was just so funny to me, like that never stopped her. It just, it was just a joke. And the main thing is, how do we keep educating our communities, our boys and our girls, about how our roles have changed now, and what do you do when faced now as a professional in these spaces that are either abusive, disrespectful to women, and also with the level of racism that may be happening in the region? What do you do now?
I think, basically, I think you don't back down and you speak, you basically, not in a bad way, but you basically have a voice. And I think, who was it that passed away, that everybody had to stay away because she was a little troublemaker, but that has a lot to do, to do with why we are where we are today. You have to kind of speak up, and if you stay mute, it's, you're gonna still stay stagnant, and we're never going to change. So I think just using your voice and speaking up, and not just saying, okay, we're not going to be around her because she speaks up. I mean, if you are passionate about something and if you believe in something, speak up. You have to. So if I feel that I'm getting discriminated against, I'll call it out and I'll say something. I'll in a nice manner, obviously, but definitely I would think that just using your voice and speaking up and getting a support system. So if something is happening, like maybe with Doriss, whatever you said you were running for city council, and you know, you in your position and kind of trying to get railroaded and pushed to the side and not moving up, you kind of need a support system. So I think we should all be there for one another if we need help. So next time you run for city council, I'm there for you. I'll be that voice for you. I'll be your pit bull. So. But yeah, so I just think using your voice.
Thank you.
I'm going to answer this question going back to, I think it was the first question that you had. Doriss and I actually had a little different answer. You said that you still see that there needs to be change. I agree with you wholeheartedly. However, given I was born in 1965, from then to today, there's been a huge difference. And that's the change that I'm talking about. And to go with what you said, there has to be rhetoric with, I don't want to say defending, but speaking for who we are. We are no different than anyone else. And we have to have that conversation with people. And I think that today there is allowance, if I could use that word loosely, but that conversation is welcomed in the workplace for the most part, what I see. If we have, and again, this is what I have been exposed to, if we see, and I have seen, conversations, or here's a perfect example. I was at a luncheon and I asked someone, what's for lunch? And someone said, oh, it's your people food. And so when I looked, it was rice and beans. So in Argentina, rice and beans is not my people food. But I was amazed because this is an educated person who told me this, a very educated person. And so it showed me that ignorance is still there. There's still a lot of education that needs to take place. And I did have the conversation with him and let him know that's unacceptable. You shouldn't just assume this is what we eat, this is what I like. The comment shouldn't even have been there. And so I think it's having that conversation, pulling someone aside. It's going to take a little bit at a time, but it has to happen. And I think it is happening. I think you have more people who are stepping up. I mean, right here at this panel, and I can look out at this audience and see many of you who do that as well. You don't sit back, you say it. And we need to scream without yelling. You know, we have to make that difference. We have to let people know exactly what we're thinking without shouting. And I think that's how it'll go through.
Oh, actually, can I say something?
Okay.
I just want to add just 2 cents into that. Yes, I think more in going into your lines, I think we have to educate. It's educating somebody else because, like what he said, oh, people food. I would have been like, oh, I got pupusas coming, all right, I'm gonna have some pupusas. But so we're not all, even though we're all, you know, Latinos but it's different. So I think it's by educating is probably the best way. So you can do it the right way and not be, I guess, a troublemaker, but educating somebody was probably the best way.
A very well-educated troublemaker.
Exactly.
You can tell I like to make trouble, that's fine.
So yes, definitely using your voice to be the voice for yourself, to educate other people, to acknowledge that they may have been not in the best place, maybe because they didn't know, right? Maybe they, you know. But also I think what David had said earlier was we need to be the voice for ourselves so that we write our own history versus letting other people write the story for us. So I think that's important, that they understand where we're coming from, that we're not all the same. Like the three of us, we all have very different cultures and identities, and so being able to express that and share that so that people are aware that there are differences, because we don't look the same, but yet people will still ask me too, oh, you're just Mexican? Yep, I'm just Mexican. You're not mixed? Nope, I am not mixed. And me and my siblings all look completely different. And they'll ask me if we have the same father. I'm like, oh yeah, we have the same dad. But they all, I don't know what they expect, you know, what a Mexican looks like, you know, the people food. And so it goes back to making sure that I'm kind about it, and I let them know. Oh, my parents have the same parents, and my family is from Mexico. And I look like my dad, which when I was little, I didn't like it because I thought I looked like a boy. But I appreciate that now. So, yeah.
Thank you, Doriss. Thank you, ladies, for that. And I think it couldn't come at a better time. You know, we're faced with things all the time. as a community right now, especially all communities of color. I think it's been happening, and something that Marisela left before said before she left. Things have changed again, yet here in the region, and you pretty much don't know when some of these comments can come your way. So having a very good, eloquent way, even-keeled way to respond to that is so important. And in fact, one other thing is about building visibility. So sometimes it's not about directly having that conversation with someone, but it's also about setting the stage, having these forums, having the opportunity to have Latina women on these walls to ensure that there's a history that's being named in this area too, or other communities are also represented. So with that said, there was a campaign yesterday that I think it's like the third year is being done by the United Nations, and it's called Wiki for Women, because only 17% of profiles on Wikimedia is only women, and far less than that is information that's created by women. And I have not looked at the stats, but I'm pretty sure that Latina women are barely on that information. So one thing that they did yesterday was to ensure that women around the globe would get together to go onto the Wikimedia encyclopedia and be able to enter profiles of women that they know in their community to ensure that that visibility is still coming up and when they're pioneers. And that brings me to the point about chambers of commerce. Chambers of commerce, especially Hispanic chambers of commerce, have been very prevalent into supporting our community's growth and growing our businesses. All of the ladies here, including Marisela, have been former presidents of the Solano Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. But we know that it's also within our own organization. Sometimes it's pretty challenging to also be a woman in those spaces. And in fact, I visited Ecuador last year, and I was told that there's only been one woman to their Chamber of Commerce ever. And there's plenty of women who have businesses. So with that said, I think in general, we're easiest to have a conversation about relationships and sometimes even about the racism that's out there, but sometimes we don't really talk about those challenges of women in spaces of money and how you present yourself there. So I ask you ladies, how do you present yourself as a woman in these spaces of money, of building businesses and making decisions? What have been those obstacles, and how have you turned that around? Go ahead. See, they're hesitant. They're not on chicken ninjas yet.
Well, I think it just kind of goes back to what I said before. It's like, when somebody says, no, you can't do this or you can't be in this position, and I'm just like, watch me. I'm going to do what I need to do to get there, to do what I want to do, where I want to be. And if I do something, then that's just making a path for somebody else younger to come in and follow that lead. But yeah, it's just basically going for it and trying to get an alliance so that you can get to that position, get an ally. And I'm sure you've had to have allies to get in the positions that you will talk to them, and we need to know how to negotiate. So negotiating to get to that position, basically, and leading the path for the younger generation.
Thank you.
One of the obstacles that I faced was the Hispanic Latina out in the business is the va-va-voom Hispanic Latina. And so it's not necessarily a woman who's taken seriously because you are this hot Latina. And you have to somehow overcome that. So you cannot go out dressed the way you'd like. You have to change your attire. You have to be more serious. You have to work a little bit harder so that you are not looked as a sex symbol, but more as, look, there's a brain, there's a person in here, there's someone who thinks. And I think that to me was challenging. I had to change a little bit of who I was. I can't be the comfortable Andrea. I have to be this business head Andrea and have a different conversation, a different dialogue to be taken seriously. Otherwise, I'm looked at as a sex symbol. And that has been very challenging. But it's happened. And at the chamber, when I was president, I was surrounded by strong women. And I do want to make a shout out to Alma,
Yes.
And Karla and Doriss. These are the women that I personally was with, and they made that journey easier. They made it, they helped make it seem like we can do this. We need to stick together. We can do this. We can make a difference. And it's looking at other women and following their paths. And we're paving that road for women like Doriss, for women like my daughter Stephanie, and making it a little bit easier. And I do think, I know it's not, there's a lot of change that still needs to happen, but we are making the difference, and I think we are starting to be seen in a different light. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done with that.
Yes, Baba Boom. All right. Go ahead.
Right, there's definitely misogyny that goes on, that takes place in these spaces, and being aware of it is one thing, but then also the way that you allow it to impact you. You know, Andrea said she had to change, you know, you do. I think for me, I was also not only a woman of color, but I was a lot of times one of the younger people in the room. And so being able to just be confident and knowing that I had the right to be in that space. Because you can walk in a room and it's full of CEOs and presidents and these very well educated. You're like, wait, I am educated. I have done this. I have traveled. I am experienced. And I have every right, just like everybody else does, to be in this space. And being able to have that confidence when having conversations. Because yeah, they look at you and I look younger than I am. Thank goodness for my genes. But at the same time, it had negative sometimes. So I could see that they would look at me like, you know, but, and then when I say what the president, like, oh, and then their face would change, the demeanor would change. So for me, it was being able to take that into a positive for myself, to be able to show that I was educated, I had the background, I had the experience, and that they could take me serious. And I think that's why I worked so hard when I was the president, because I felt like, not that I had to prove to anybody, but more to myself, that I was given this position. I wasn't up next. Per se, in the line to be president, but I said yes. So I said yes, and then I figured it out as I went. And it was one of those, I kind of fake it till you make it. And I learned so much, and I wouldn't have done it. I would have regretted, I think, if I had said no. Because even though I felt I wasn't ready, these women thought that I was. And so I did it, and it was a great experience.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So, you know, talking about how you present yourself in certain spaces, it was definitely through my love of music that I learned a lot of great things, but a lot of harsh things. I was really young when I was already singing, and it was important for me to understand what that meant on stage and also in the different spaces and different cultures. And then it really drove me to understand that I didn't like the way women were treated. I didn't like the way women performers were supposed to be or act, and I had none of those things. So, you know, on occasions it was, you have to sing the song in a certain way, because I was in a Salvadorian band or Central American band for a while there. And it was my first exposure to actually being in that space. So when I said, I'm sorry, I know I'm Salvadorian, but I was born here, which means if you need someone to have that style, submissive style, it's going to have to be someone you go handpick over there, because it's not going to be me. But after that, what ended up happening is I decided, you know what, I want to study women and gender studies. And I was so excited, and I came here in Solano County, and someone who was a leader in the community said to me, Roxana, why don't you major in something that matters? And then I said, you know what, you just decided for me. It does matter for me, and I'm going to do this, and I haven't regretted it since. And that allowed me to understand my first year at UC Davis that women who go into this field specifically of, you know, working around the term of feminism, which gets all the wrong connotations, really what it is women and gender studies is studying everything around the world that you can think of with a women's and gender lens. This includes men. It doesn't mean that you hate men. And so that was a harsh learning, and first thing that was taught to me is, like, as a feminist, remember you're going to lose all forms of your culture, because there's not a culture that doesn't have that. And so that said, it led me in this path to make sure that I was using my education, the different things I had learned in all these different spaces, to share it with other women, but also how would I bring more Latinos and Latinas into the space to understand what this meant. And I started joining women's organizations. So that leads me to your next question. What organizations have you been supporting for women, and why did you choose to support that, considering some of these negative connotations that this may have?
You go. We going this way? No, you go.
Go for it, Doriss.
So I support, well, I'm an alum of the Emerge California program, and they train women to run for office. And so I support them. I'm going to go and speak at one of their classes, I think next weekend. And I think it was a great program. It really helped me train and know what to expect when running for office. And one of my Emerge sisters is here, Patrice. and she's running next year. So it was a really great program, and they do really great things. They bring in other women, so women train other women, and you're exposed to this amazing network to learn from and lean on. And I'm also on the commission of Solano County Women and Girls. I applied when I was running, and I'm an at-large member of the commission as well. And so right now we're getting together to put out a survey of women, of the status of women and girls in Solano County. So I'm happy to be a part of that group as well.
Excellent, thank you.
I do not belong to any women organization. It does not mean I do not support women. I do, however, I appreciate, I value the women friends that I have. I think it's important that we belong or help with an organization, a woman organization, but I also think it's important that we do have our female friends, we do have our network of friends who support one another. Again, the journey was a little different. There were sometimes women do not support one another. And it's unfortunate because you see jealousy, envy, whatever. We can go down the list. Someone's threatening. I have a very outgoing personality, and sometimes that doesn't mesh with others. And my very good friends are the strong women. Not the insecure women, but strong women. And once I click with one of those, I don't let them out of my life because they matter, they make a difference. Mary Jo, you're one. And so it's hard because I did actually go to a woman, I won't say which one, but I did go to a women organization, and there was not much gelling going on. But again, there was 4 of us, 4 females who went out the other night. We had an amazing time. We bonded, and we told stories, and we talked about life, and that matters, and that makes a difference, and that to me is important and at the core.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. That's one challenge in the women's movement, but any community that's also been abused tends to have that part of it as part of the growth process. But I absolutely believe that, and especially in Latino communities, you had the tandas, you had the church groups, you had all these different things that didn't necessarily mean regular traditional feminist groups. So I do want to clear that up. So go ahead.
I too, I'm not involved in anything as of today, but when I was a little bit younger, I actually coached soccer, and it started with my kids. I have 4 kids, and when they were younger, I wanted to put them in sports because my mom was a single mom with 4 kids, and she couldn't afford to put me in sports because I was, like I told you earlier, I was a tomboy. So my mom could only afford to put my brothers in sports, and I couldn't. But that didn't stop me from running the streets with my brothers and playing street soccer and baseball. I've broken a few windows and scattered, but it's scattered. It's okay. No, I got in trouble. They found out it was me, so trust me, I got the chancla. But as my kids were growing up, since we're all a product of what happens to us when we're younger, right? So things that happen to us have a profound, long effect on us. And so for me, since I didn't play organized sports, I put my kids in organized sports. And that was something that I drilled into them. And I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't go to college. I don't have a college education. But since I didn't do that, I made sure that my kids did. So that was something that I didn't do. I messed up. I didn't, complete college. So I made sure that all my kids did. So I'm batting, 3 for 4. The last one is giving me a headache, but that's why I have to dye my hair every 2 weeks. But anyways, so what I did as my kids were playing soccer, I ended up coaching soccer, and I ended up coaching girls that were in their teenage years. And even though I was there for them, they actually taught me a lot. They would come to me with their problems and, gangs. They wanted to get initiated in gangs. And so I made sure that I kept these girls so busy that we went traveling all over the state that they were not going to get involved in gangs, because I grew up in San Francisco and Daly City, and yeah, gangs were all around. I didn't end up doing drugs, but everybody that I knew did drugs, you know. And so I remembered that. And so when I was coaching these girls, it was so hard in my life because, like I said, I had 4 kids and they all played sports. And then I had this other group of girls that I didn't have a child in that team, but I loved it. And I would let them talk to me, and we'd go away for the whole weekend, and sometimes the parents couldn't go, and so they'd room with me. And I'd always make sure we would have like a spa day, and then we'd kind of have like a little chit chat, and I'd talk to them, and I would tell them some of the things that I did wrong and what I had seen, and just kind of, you know, mentor them in that way. And I love it because till this day, those girls, they're now 32 and 33, they, you know, they're my friends on Facebook or Instagram, and they're always like, they send me messages and they're like, you have no idea. Thank you so much for coaching us and taking us out of the street and just kind of making us, you know, they would fight amongst themselves. Let me tell you, my team lost all the time because the girls hated each other. And I had very good players. We should have won every single game, but we lost every single game because the girls are bad, you know. Boys, no. I'm saying, when we don't like each other, and this is why, yes,
That's why we need to work on this.
Right, exactly. And that's what happened. The girls did not like each other, and finally at the end we started winning games when it didn't matter anymore. And I'm like, really? We can't even, you know, compete in regional or anything because you guys weren't gelling at the beginning. But I love it because they still call me, and some of them have like, thank you so much, because for playing sports and you mentoring us, you know, we've gone on to, you know, to be coaches ourselves. So a lot of them are coaching. So that's the only thing that I do.
Hopefully they're gelling over there, right?
They're
gelling now.
exactly. They ended up gelling, right? They ended up gelling at the end.
All right. Yes, please go ahead.
Something Karla said, I have to know this. How many people know what chancla is? Okay, for those of the Hispanics, right? So chancla is chancleta. It's your slipper. And man, did mom take that out when you got in trouble. Bam. My mother went through a pair every week. It was like, and that was okay. It was normal. I don't hold it against her. No, that was okay. And I did want to go back to something you said. You said about you don't have a college education. You are embarrassed about that.
Well, I was right. I mean,
you have nothing to be embarrassed about because you are a very successful woman.
See, and that's exactly the support we're talking about. And yes, there's many ways to come to success, and especially, and it's so important for people to see this because sometimes we track people to you just have to have a college degree, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. Every community has their own thing. I think in Latino communities we may have a few things, like if you haven't had children is a problem, you know, all of that stuff. So, so that's it. How do you get out of that box? And we focus on how to support each other is so important. And thinking about that too is, we know that Latinas are the most underpaid here in the country. And also we know that recent study shows that when women are managing the money, they're also the most likely to give angel investment money to other female businesses. Otherwise, they do not get those funds. And so that's why we asked that question also about organization, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be active in one. It could be a soccer team, it could be a church thing, it could be your friends. But how are you supporting and mobilizing that money is very important to support your community of women to grow to that next level as well. So this next question, and this will be our second to last, and then we're going to open it up to 2 more questions and we'll wrap up. So just giving you guys a heads up there. Is who are your allies outside of your traditional Latina, powerhouses that you keep around you? Who are they? Would be males, would be from other communities, and what important role have they played in you moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, an ally. Well, first, I kind of going back to my childhood, not an ally, but a very, very important role in growing up was my kindergarten teacher that was so mean to me, because had she not done that to me, I think I wouldn't have been the Spitfire, and I wouldn't have done what I to set my goals and just do it. But I'm a family person, so I'm sorry, but my kids are so I'm so close to my kids. I know they're 32, 30, and 28, and 22. And family's everything. And so when I need something or if they need something, we rely on each other. And so I would have to say that it's my children. And then my best friend that's sitting in the front row, Myra, she... No, she does. No. So, and then these ladies here. So I think my allies are, I'm sorry, I think I'm not, but it's the women that I'm around, and some, you know, it's women. It's women that are my allies.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's good to know. All right, go ahead.
I think like you know, it's all family. The number one ally, though, is my mom, and she is my pillar because she's the one who set the path to what I should be doing, you know, and she would be mortified me telling you this story, but she was born in the outskirts of Argentina, Buenos Aires, rather, and it's farmland, and her family raised cows and had horses and chickens, etc. And she left when she was, I think she said 11, to move to Buenos Aires. And she did that because she wanted to better her life, and she didn't want to, she picked cotton. She did a lot of grunt work. She was the oldest of 6, and she didn't want to do that. She wanted something more with her life. And then she moved to Buenos Aires, and she does not have a college degree. She doesn't even have high school, but she went to a trade school. And she came to the United States married with my dad. And she became a citizen, learned the language, and she still, God bless her, speaks broken English, you know, but she learned the language, became a citizen, and I saw her study, you know, I saw her take this journey. She had 2 of her own businesses. She opened businesses in New York without knowing anything about business, about the money, etc. And so I have to say, you know, she always said this to me, siempre hay esperanza. There's always hope. And that is always with me. In fact, that's something I want tattooed on my body one day because she says this so much. And she still to this day says it. And she's 87 and she wants to move across the country, which I know she will. And she's still going. You would never know. She's on the treadmill. I mean, she's doing all this amazing stuff. And she's still going and going and going. And she just keeps showing me that, you know, when there's a will, there's a way. When we want to do something, we're going to do it. And then, like Karla said, these are my pillars right here as well. You know, Daniel, Stephanie, and Tony, the 3 of you certainly keep me in check and keep me in my path. And Daniel, you really test my patience. You really keep me on my path. Wave hello, Dan. Remember I told you I love to embarrass my kids, right? So they are.
That's how we do it.
That's how we do it. And then also my friends, and I have my friends who are here today supporting, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So there are several, but the number one is my mom is the example.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So allies for me, definitely the women in my circle, you know, and just thinking back to other allies I've had in my life, even thinking back as far as high school. It was a teacher, Mrs. Wright, my religion teacher. I went to Siena and Napa, and I was quiet in high school, kind of nerdy, and she was the one that always was pushing me to try new things, to go to different clubs, and my parents weren't always the most, willing to allow me to go to these new experiences, but she was always putting them in front of me. And she saw something within me. And so looking back now, going forward, it's been other women that have been able to see that within me and being able to push me forward. When I applied for the Merge program, it was because there was a woman in our community who heard me speak, Dana Dean, and she approached me. She's like, hey, have you ever thought about this program? You know, you need to look into it. And they have other women here in the audience who have been my allies in terms of, come on, you got this, you have it within you. And I know I do, but it's always been great to have those other women in the community that are outside of my own circle that also see something within myself. And I want to be able to give that back to others. And so when I see other young women or other young Latinas, I'm also a mentor with the program at Solano. I love it because I'm able to be that ally for other young women in our community, because growing up, I really didn't have that. And so I know that we as women, we need that. We need the, the support system, and it's great to have that, obviously. So being able to give that forward to other women and other women of color has been key.
Excellent, thank you very much. And that is, allies are so important. And as you think of this next question to answer, I'll share a little bit, is to think about what do you see in the future of Solano around Latina leaders. But as you're thinking, I just want to share about the partnerships. It's really important, especially now, and things have changed. I work with clients who are working with children and family services because they've gone through domestic violence. And usually what happens is that the males and the females are just not talking the same language. And sometimes they're coming from other countries, and I'll sit there and I'll talk to the men. I talk to the aggressors and I talk to the survivors. I talk to the kids, I talk to the whole family. And very many times, it's just disconnect about where our roles are and what needs to happen. If you live in the Bay Area, one income is just not enough. So whereas where back home, maybe the woman did not work, as soon as you cross that border, you're here and you both need to work. And then therefore this person now has questions and has more control over her money. So having a conversation with the men sometimes, it's like, do you understand the difference? Did someone give you a manual when you cross the border and said, this is the way American life functions? It doesn't. And so let's talk about those things. And so very important about that, building the right allies and support. In that space, it's being a cultural broker for our own community, especially those that are Spanish speakers or new immigrants. But in other spaces, in business, it's actually been white males that have been the most supportive to me. It has not been mostly Caucasian women or Latinas. And so, but in certain spaces here in the community, it has been Latinas who have been the most supportive to some of the things that I've been doing. So think about all these different circles and spaces that you move in, and who are your allies, and who do you need to bring, and who do you need to educate in that space to move things forward. We can't do this in isolation. David took this on and he said it's for the entire community, but he's celebrating women. And we also have to celebrate the men in our community too. They need to be brought up in all the communities of colors and partners that we have. Some of my best friends in the recent years have been Caucasian women that truly understand our community and are devoted to support, and I support them back. We're trying to struggle and understand these challenges that we're in right now, and we have very open conversations, which I think have been great for my growth and theirs. So now I open it up for you to wrap up. What do you see for the future of Latinas here in Solano County?
I see great things, actually. Going back to what Andrea said before, because we were born in the 60s, and so we're a little different from Doriss, super smart. Because we have seen a lot of change, and yes, there's still a lot of room. But I actually think moving forward, because of statistics are that female Latinas, unfortunately or fortunately, are getting college degrees more so than the male Hispanics. They're the ones that are falling out of college. So I actually think that's paving the way for Latina females. And I think in Solano County especially, we're a little bit more open-minded as far as having a Latina or a female in a leadership role. So I actually think it's with people like Doriss, and because Alma and Dori, they're so big with the younger generation, and those two are so smart. I love them. So I think they're doing great things, and because of those two and people like them, I actually think that Solano County is going to have Latina leaders, and you're looking at just two in this room right now that I can point to.
Thank you.
So I've been optimistic, and this is the one point I might not be as optimistic.
Bring it.
Bring it on. There's, who can tell me how many Latina city council members that we have in Solano County? No, really, how many? I think just one. I think there's just one. In Dixon, I thought there was just one in Dixon. No, city council. City council. I don't think we have many, if one or two. That's what needs to change. And I'm not saying the entire panel, but we need to have our voice there, and that's something that I'm concerned about. We have Doriss, who hopefully will get in the next election. But we need voices like this to bring that to the council so that your community understands. Remember, going back to our conversations earlier, how we seem to be pigeonholed, and it takes educating one person at a time. But we need to have Hispanics in those city council roles. But in order to do that, we have to start educating people today. We have to start educating our youth and who's out there in Solano County. Who are those voices right now? And that's what concerns me. We have so many great people in Solano County. We have so many great voices. We have so many leaders, but they're not taking that step to a city council level. And beyond that, right? But we have to have that. We have to have that out there. So I think we're out there. It's just a matter of showing that support and supporting the person who does run and letting them know it's okay. You can do this. We've got you. We're right behind you. You've got a family right behind you. But we have to start here now to make sure that we have them all over the county, because what are we, 33% Hispanic in Solano County, and we don't have a representation out there? There's something not right with that. So, Doriss, you gotta make it. You gotta make that change next time. No pressure.
It's all up to you.
Support Doriss.
You even got her talk to her. My goodness, she felt that energy.
Yeah, I did. So, right, there is definite need, like I said before, and it is needed. You need people at the top to be able, that understand where they came from, so that they can lead appropriately those who they are leading and serving. And I see it, and hopefully 2020 will come around and I'll run again. But it is hard to garner other individuals, to get them to get to that level. For some, it takes something to happen. For me, something happened 10 years ago and it inspired me to run. Everybody does it for different reasons. So how do you bring those people together and support them? Emerge does a great job at that, but at a local level, we don't have, I don't know, this is what I feel. I see other counties, so I've worked in other counties before, and so I see other counties have a lot of they have more groups so people can come together, Latino groups or base groups or leadership groups, and Solano County, we don't have too many of those where people can come together and grow into these spaces. I think with the Solano County Women and Girls Commission, I think it's a great start, because it will really allow us to see the numbers in regards to statistics of women and where we all stand in our different spaces within the community, and allowing us to see where we do need to add more programs or where we can improve better, because it is definitely lacking. And I think if we're able to bring those people together, because I know there's people that want to run, but I don't know that they know where to go or who to ask or who to talk to. And so I think that's why mentoring is so important, because we're in these spaces with these young people, and then even if they're not our mentee, and when they bring us together and you learn about what they want to do, and then my ears always perk up when a young person says, I want to run for office. I run towards them, because I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to run for? Let me know how I can help you. Because for myself, I was lucky enough to get into a program that taught me, but I had been watching people run. But it's such a different experience when you're going through it, and you need that support. And so when I hear I know there's a young Latino who immigrated here, and he wants to run he goes, I want to be a state senator one day. I almost cried, because his story is so empowering of the day that he came into this country when he was little. He had me in tears. And he has won our Hispanic scholarship a couple of times. He's just an amazing student. And so those are the individuals that I live for, because they have the biggest passion and they have all these goals and dreams, and I know what that feels like. But then there's also this part where you get to the end of the road and you're like, wait, where do I go now? Who do I turn to? And so being able to have people know, if you want to run for office, put it out in the universe. I always tell somebody, whatever you want to do in life, you got to talk about it. You got to tell people, because if people don't know, then how are you going to get there? You can't keep it a secret. You got to let it be known. And I've been telling people I was going to run for office for 10 years. And so I was like, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And it was never, I never felt ready. But if you wait to be ready, then it's never gonna happen. You just gotta do it. Just gotta jump in, figure it out. I feel like I've done that a lot in my life. But you learn so much, and then you're able to turn around and bring up somebody else behind you. So,
Thank you. And you know, with that, last month I hosted a forum for working with immigrant families with the United Nations Association, and there present was a woman who has been recognized nationally for her human rights background, and she's 80-something years old, I don't know exactly, but powerhouse, that she teaches in Berkeley Law School. And she explained to me one thing that really concerns her in general, that our educational system no longer really teach us civics education, and therefore people really don't know about the basics of the way you really should carry yourself even in office. She mentioned how even a lot of these female leaders that are in space now, she's worried about that they have the positions, but they're not fully ready to be in that space and take it on as they need to, that they need a lot of coaching and mentoring and support from all of those around. And I think that goes a long way. I mean, right now that things have been so hectic around political issues, people have been scrambling to try to learn how things function, especially the younger generations, those that were not as inspired maybe to be active. So considering what's going on, I do believe there's an opportunity for us to really take some of that energy, some of that anger, some of that fire to move it forward and really build some education around that and start with our younger ages, because people don't really know until they know how they can change things. And you guys have all figured it out, but not everybody has that in them, and I think having that model is so important. And working with our boys especially. Think also working about all the challenges that women are going through, and especially young girls. I think we also have to work with our boys. How, especially the women that are in charge of taking care of them mostly at home. Still to this day, what does this look like? What kind of man do I want my daughter to marry, or what kind of man do I want my son to be, and what does that mean in these spaces? And I've seen so many great men out there who learned that from their mothers, from their single mothers, and they moved that forward, and you can really tell that. So there's a lot of support out there. We just need to continue growing it. So with that said, I'm opening it up for 2 questions to the audience if we have any questions, and if not, we'll get ready to close up. So do we have any questions from our audience? I see one there. Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question. I was actually on the board of directors when the Solano Chamber of Commerce with Andrea, so I'm assuming I'm one of those powerful women you were talking about.
Yes.
So my question is, and I've seen this a lot, pretty involved in the community and pretty involved with kids, and I see kind of a clash of cultures from the Hispanic community when young women are going through high school and they want to go to college. Their culture is kind of prohibiting them from doing so. They're supposed to stay at home, they're not supposed to leave on their own. And I think it's such a disservice because some of these young women could really make the difference, but they're not given the chance, and it's kind of, as I said, this clash of culture. So what can we do as a community, both Hispanic and non-Hispanic, to mesh that, to make that work?
Yeah. So Tom Phillips from Recology, General Manager, he served on the board when I was president. He served for 2.5, 3 years. I felt it was important with the Hispanic Chamber not only to have Hispanics, but to have different cultures. And again, it's just educating other cultures. He was in charge of the education scholarships, and this is why he's asking that question. We received a lot of applications, and there were students who in their essays would write that their families are not supporting them. You need to understand something. It's not necessarily that they're not supporting you. It's certain families you need to follow a trade and not go to school. It doesn't mean you shouldn't succeed. It means take a different path to success. And I mentioned my mom, how supportive she was of me. She did not want me to go to school. She was supportive, and you got to work. So when I at one time held 3 jobs, she was like, yes, this is great. School was not important. You know, when I told her I got my degree, or even I went up to my master's, she's like, oh. It was not a big deal to her. You know, it was like work, work, work. What's your title now? Where are you at? That's what was important to her, not the education aspect. But it didn't mean that she didn't want me to succeed. It meant that there's a different path to get there. There's a change, as we talked about. And I think that as you have, like Doriss, as you have younger people, or even us, mentoring a younger group, they're starting to see, you know, education, you know, if you want to go that route, that's okay. You know, that you can do that if they see the rewards that are being reaped. And again, it's educating. It's educating the parents, you know, offering perhaps forums, offering these conversations, offering a place where they can go to the high schools where they can get that seminar. This is what they get when they do go to college. And as much as I'm an avid believer of education, it isn't for everyone. Not everybody wants to do that. You can find success without taking that route. You can take another route and still be successful. So, but to go back to answering that, I think is offering seminars and just educating the parents. And I think it's starting to happen. That if their students want it, or their kids rather want to take that route, then that's okay. But it is starting to change. It's not as it was. And I don't know if either one of you have a comment with that.
I have something to say. I think I remember seeing some of those essays as well. And honestly, a lot of them, I think it isn't that they don't necessarily have the support of their parents. That's what they're saying, and that's what their parents are kind of implying in a way. But I think the majority of that reason why the parents don't necessarily support them going to college, it's funds. They think that they do not have the funds to send their child to college. And the Hispanic community is so private sometimes. Parents don't discuss things with their children. And so they don't want to tell their child, I don't have the money to send you to school. And so instead of that, they're like, oh, no, you should just, you know, stay at home. You need to get married and find a good husband, or, you know, go to work right away and get that money. Because I think it's the lack of funds, and they are not educated to know that there's other outlets to help pay for college. So I think it's educating the parents. And I don't think that the parents don't want to not support their kids to go to college. I think a lot of it is embarrassment inside that they do not have the money to send their kids to college. And so they don't tell their kids that. And so then their kids are kind of, it trickles down like, oh, my parents don't want me to go to college. You know, they think it's a waste of time. But in reality, it's the money situation.
Thank you. Doriss, do you have something? So I think it is that you know, it was a pride thing, like asking for help. But at the same time, it is educating the parents on what there is available for them in terms of financial aid. I worked at Solano Community College in the financial aid department, and a lot of it was, it's a confusing process. So being able to break down that information for parents to allow them to know that if your child does want to go on to college, whether, you know, nearby or far away, there is opportunities for them to do so. Even, you know, and all of them are DACA, so they can't apply for federal fund. So how do you get them to college? Some of them can. They have to actually work for a couple of years, save up money, or get scholarships, and then go on. And so understanding what that means to that student. For myself, had it been up to my dad, I wouldn't have gone. I went to USC, that's University of Southern California down in LA. Had it been up to my dad, I would not have gone down south, because I have no family down there, and my parents are super conservative. I couldn't even go, yeah, anyways, that's a whole other story. But, another panel. But my mom told me, if you go to Solano College for 2 years, you can go wherever you want. So I applied to USC. And I only applied to USC, and it's not because of the football, believe it or not. I got into that later. It was because they had a ballet folklorico group. Because I've been dancing ballet since I was 5. And I wanted to keep on dancing in college. And I went to a conference in Sacramento at Sac State, and there was danzantes there from USC. And I was like, oh, they're from USC? That's where I want to go to college. So I can keep dancing.
Well, once I transferred, I got into USC, and I couldn't believe it. And my mom was like, okay, that's where you're going. And I was like, you're letting me go to LA by myself? Like, it was a surprise. I couldn't even go to sleepovers when I was little. Like, you have your own bed at home, you don't need to be sleeping somewhere else. Like, that was what I always got, right? So for me to be able to allow to go to USC was this, like, I was like, oh my goodness, okay, they're actually letting me go. But had it been up to, my father, I probably would have gone to community college and then, gone maybe somewhere closer to home. But I chose USC because of my passion for dancing, and it was a great experience. But there are, I had to apply for financial aid, I had to apply for scholarships, and I know a lot of families, it's a process, it's a journey getting someone to that level, but you'll have to have that support system. And neither my parents went to college, and God bless them, like they supported me. I'm the first of 4. And so now after I went through the process, I was able to turn around and help my siblings figure out the financial aid and, applying for the scholarships and, the application itself is the whole thing, the essays and all that. And so I'm grateful that my mom, put her foot down and was like, this is what she wants to do. We're gonna let her do it. And I was able to have this experience that I'm very grateful for.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those comments, ladies. But I am going to say that I agree and I disagree. So I do agree with all those statements because I do believe that's true. It does tend to be that. There's also tends to be a lot of fear factor, but I do get to see the other side of it in my line of work, and I do get to see a lot of the misconception with the older generation around what they see. Sometimes we have meetings at Children and Family Services that are just around this topic because of such a disconnect on cultural roles still very strict about where they would want their family. Now, if they stay local, it's easier for a family to understand and accept if you stay in Solano or whichever is closer for that transition to happen. In my mentoring days, especially with parents who want their children to follow some of my path, I make it very clear that I tell them, if you send your child as an intern with me and they're traveling with me, you have to be okay with that, because you only get to see what I post on Facebook, what happens with that, but you don't get to see the back end work of that, and that means a lot of travel, that means being around a lot of men, that means around, being outside of my nature, my comfort zone. But the parents have a real hard time with that. And I do know that they have hard time from that from traditional perspective in terms of like religious things and where, things that could happen to the young daughters, and they prefer they stay at home. Others prefer that, the family route, that by going to school, they're gonna stop having kids. I've had parents directly say that to me. I don't want my daughter to go to college like you because she probably won't find a man to get married with. So that kind of stuff, eventually this person that I'm thinking about eventually divorced her husband, and we talked about what that meant. She's also a business owner, but long story short, is some of this disconnect there about what that means. I remember clearly having one event that I'm kind of sad I haven't kept doing stuff out here, but it was La Voz Hispana magazine. I said, let's do a contest for the young girls, but I don't want them to just be pretty. I want them to know that they're going to become journalists for your magazine, and they're going to get to be on the cover and all this stuff. We had girls from all over Solano County be part of this. It was insane, and it was something really small that we did. I didn't realize how much it was going to pick up. But I remember clearly, all of these girls still stay in touch with me. A lot of them have gone off to college, but there was one girl, the girl who won. Short after that she won, she had gotten a full scholarship to go to Sac State, and there was a lot of people supporting her from Dixon community. And I get a call from one of my mentors. She's like, Roxana, you know this girl? I need you to talk to her. She got sent by her parents that she needs to go get married and not go to college with a full scholarship. We need to help her annul that marriage. She does not want to be married. She wants to leave. And that's what we did. It took a whole community effort to ensure that she got the right support. And I know she went, she graduated, she did everything that she needed to do. But it takes a lot of education. And I always tell parents, there's a transition. When you go to college, you leave your space, your culture comfort zone. And therefore, in a way, may feel like you're betraying that space in your family, your traditions, and so forth. And it gets really tough. So there will be a moment that won't be easy, and it requires people like those here in the room to kind of educate both the parents and the kids of what that transition means, because it feels like you're being a malinche, you're leaving your family, you're leaving your culture, you're leaving this space, and that's not true for everybody. Like for me, that wasn't true. My parents wanted me to go to college, but I think when that does happen, and it's not because of money, but there are some traditional gender roles, we need more programs that can make that happen, and part of that is definitely funds. It goes back to what I talked earlier, what are we supporting out there? And part of it is working with the parents, And working with them all the way through, also the models of education systems in Latin America are very different. The parents engage in a different way with the school systems. That's not what we have here. We are lacking leadership in our educational system at the top level. I've heard some pretty complicated things that I won't share here today in the school districts in this community that I know have not been nurturing to make that grow. So I think there's a lot of education from a lot of spaces that need to happen. And I think as Latino communities, we need to own up to and learn and be okay to be open to that. So there's a lot of bridging that needs to happen. There's a lot more programs that we could be having, but I think even having this conversation is a great start. So thank you. There was one more question back there, and I think that's all we have time for her in the back. Thank you. And you can always ask after unless they give me more time over here, but go ahead.
Halito, which is hello in my Choctaw language. Before I came here today, I was at Taco Bell, where we had a protest. I was standing with the mothers and aunties and sisters who have lost their sons and daughters to police violence. That same violence that we see being played out at the border. And so my question is, why do we continue to label ourselves as immigrants? We are not immigrants. We are the descendants of the indigenous people. It doesn't matter whether you come from El Salvador, Argentina, or Mexico. We are not immigrants. We are native people living on our ancestral lands, our ancestral continents. And we need to decolonize that narrative. And we need to start right here. Stop using that term. We're not immigrants. We were here, we've been here for thousands and thousands of years. And we need to start right there, okay? That's what I have to say.
Thank you for sharing that, and I will say this to you. I think in our internal conversations, a lot of us do say that in our own community. I think it's not the narrative and the way it's actually expressed out there in out large. But I don't know someone in my family who's ever labeled themselves that when they're having that internal conversation. It's just not public discourse, which is a little different. I don't know if someone else would say that, but I do agree. I mean, there is part of that education. You know, you standing up and saying that is part of us having that conversation, which I'm sure has a long way to go. Because, you know, there's one thing between what we talk about and what's actually in writing there. But I'll ask the rest of the group if there's anything different that they have to say to that.
I want to thank you for saying that. I appreciate that comment. Maybe this is a non sequitur and I don't want to embarrass you guys, but I saw a picture of my family in Santiago del Estero in Argentina. And they had, and I've never seen, I never was raised with them. I remember I'm born in New York. It was just the four of us in New York, my sister, my parents. But I saw a picture of my family there and they had an indigenous look. And so I decided I would do a little research. And what I did was, I looked at where my mom was from. And in Santiago del Estero, there was a migration there from the Incans. And so I thought, oh my gosh, Ma, are we Native American? And she was like, no, how could you say that? And so what ended up happening, I did the DNA testing. And I found that I have 36%. Yeah, Native American. And then my mom was still denying it. And so when she was here last time, I had her spit in a cup and I did the DNA tested on her. And she ended up having 64%.
Wow.
Yeah, she was. So I'm very proud of it. I'm extremely proud of it. And I still want to do the genealogy and find out more because I think there's a lot to be said for that. We do label ourselves where we're from. I think for Argentines, I'm only going to speak for us, we're very proud. Argentines are extremely proud of where they're from, and they don't like to associate that they're even part of South America or Central America. They're very, very vain. However, I'm not. And I want to learn more about my family, and I do appreciate that comment because I think that we are all indigenous, and we do have something in us, and I want to find out where that's all coming from. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, with that, unless you ladies have any last wise words, make it short so we can wrap up over here. I do. Go for it. There you go. Wise
David, this is what I warned you about.
Go.
I am. David, we want to thank you. That's what I want to say. Thank you, David, for always being our support system. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to our panelists. Hear it again for them. Round of applause. Thank you so much for your stories. And to Marisela as well, which is not here.
Thank you.